Well, morning. It is Thursday morning. I had to look up into the sky like some reader of portents or something to remember what day it was. So Thursday, wisdom's chats. We've gone from talking about symbols to brands, and today we're talking personal brand. And yeah, so that would be interesting to think about. How do you see yourself as a brand? So Trevor, let's start with you. What is your personal brand?
Yeah, thank you very much for starting with me. I think that for me has been the most difficult concept of the lot. It completely underlies everything about social media. And my entire life, I've always felt that although people would turn around and say that I was quite outgoing, I've always actually been quite reclusive, as it were, and never wanting to be in the front of the crowd, pretty reluctant to stand on stages and that sort of thing, but felt that I had to do it to actually sell a brand. And those brands were things like the Academy of Learning, the Protected Investment Fund, various operations. So I always stood up on a stage to actually sell a business brand. And I had huge difficulty. Well, it wasn't huge difficulty. I just didn't want myself as an individual put up on the stage. Just never was that. And it became a deeper and deeper problem as I then started getting to study what personal branding and social media was about. And I spent a year and a half studying Gary Vaynerchuk on a daily basis to understand why he was so successful at what he was doing. And that entire year, I turned around and said, well, I'm going to replicate, duplicate, copy everything that this guy does. It's the hardest thing in the world to do. I take my hat off to these guys who build brands on social media because they demonstrate consistency, regularity, just keep on pushing their messages. And Ivan, we had a discussion about this guy, Beast. I was talking to my granddaughter that Ivan brought up his name yesterday. He has a youngster that suddenly gets onto social media and builds up this huge following and is worth a couple of $1 million. There's this other guy, Flamingo. I have to watch him every morning when my granddaughter gets up because she takes over the TV. I was trying to watch what happened to the State Capture Commission within 30 seconds of switching the TV on for that. Flamingo came on because my granddaughter had hupsed the remote control. And there was Flamingo, who's worth something in the region of $8 million per annum, just turning around and berating Roblox for all of a sudden creating huge problems in the social media space because when they went to listing, they then started taking away maverick contributors to their Roblox development. And I was listening to this guy talking. His personal brand is the most amazing thing ever. He sounds like a blooming Mickey Mouse, Walt Disney character. In fact, I think that must be what he's building up to. He must be around 24, 25. And I'm sure he's waiting for Walt Disney to actually grab him for a voiceover of their new cartoon features. But it's all about personal brand. Then there was a young lady, on social media who was discussing Karens. I haven't got a clue what Karens are. Perhaps Lee can explain what Karens are, but I did discover after a little while what people are doing on social media, and they're just building their social brands. In fact, I posted on the chamber yesterday. My granddaughter wanted to understand something about Myanmar, and she asked me questions about it, and I got embarrassed because I suddenly couldn't work out where was Myanmar positioned in the world. And I discovered from a new program just developed called Geography Now, Myanmar, these youngsters have just over the last couple of weeks put together a social media program educating everyone as to the geography of every country around the world. And they're building a personal brand out of this. You've got to have a look at it. I posted it onto our chamber link, but you can also search for Geography Now Myanmar. And then what I did is I looked to see what comment they had to make on South Africa. Which is very interesting because it's very relevant, it's up to date, it's about 2 weeks old in the making. That's how up to date they are. And I was curious to see what they had to say. So personal branding, what's on the go? I think this whole social media is about personal branding, and I'm right out of the personal branding what is it, drive. I'm still a reluctant entrepreneur. I don't like to be in front of everyone. It's very difficult for me, but we've got to try and do it. So I prefer to build a brand. So yay to our Wisdom's brand. I'd rather try and build that brand. It's very difficult for me, this personal branding thing.
Great, thanks, Joe. Yeah, a nice introduction into it, but yeah, it's an interesting challenge. So let's get across to Tabiso, because I know he's building his personal brand. So Tabiso, talk to us about your personal brand and what it all means.
Okay, I conceptualize the world, as two, yin yang, I see the world as, explored territory, and, there's always that polarity between, day and night, positive and negative, masculine energy and feminine. And what I identify most with, is the active side, I'm not a passive guy, I'm a creator. I love creativity. Now, how I see the world is that I see the world in terms of polarities, like I said, right? I like the example of Harry Potter, Harry Potter is something that I modeled my brand behind, because Harry Potter is like, the hero, the guy who is the one, in a sense that he survived only because of love, and he faced all this like, negative energy, this bad energy and all that. And yet he's still like considered to be the one. Is on the positive spectrum of the polarity case, so his positive energy, he's active, he is the hero, and hence Antakalipa hero, it's the hero's journey, you watch stories like Shrek, he actually goes up to the castle and he slays the dragon, I like stories like that because I am active, I am a creator, I am a builder, I am, someone who likes to make things out of nothing, where there's nothing, that's where I'm at, because I believe that if I can capture like the spirit of the time, I can capture like enthusiasm and bring into the energy, I can create something big. So basically that's like my brand, that's what I'm trying to put out. The whole masculine charge of the world. I think that you should stand on your feet, and actually get things done, So that's what my brand is about, the whole Antakalipa thing. Antakalipa, by the way, doesn't mean anything. I just made it up, because I wanted to assign a meaning to the word Antakalipa to create a brand. It doesn't mean anything. There is no such thing as Antakalipa, for example, I'm creating something out of nothing yet again, you know. And that's what my brand is about. My brand is about love, because I believe in love. Love is what makes everything go right, you know. And the concept of self-realization, you know, to self-actualize, to actually be active. So I think that's how I would conceptualize my brand, you know, yin yang, active, positive, masculine, just everything that pushes things forward. I think that's like everything for today. That's my 2 cents today. Thank you, Ivan.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Thabiso. Yeah, I think that's you've obviously got it well in mind and well in hand. So yeah, good do that. And Trevor's desperately needs some help. So if you've got some spare time, you know, you might be able to try and help an old man out. But anyway, so let's get across to Shrek. I mean, Ed. Let's.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm totally with Thabiso. You know, Shrek is my hero. He's my role model. The other one is Kronk in a film called The Emperor's New Groove. Kronk is also someone I model myself on. I thought it interesting that Trevor conflated brand with social media, and then he pops up a link to something called Geography Now. You know, in the old days when I wanted to know where Myanmar was, which was then called Burma, I used to turn to a thing called the Times Atlas of the World. And that was a brand. The Times Atlas of the World was a brand. You know, social media is just a medium. It's just a way of communicating. It's nothing different. It's the same as standing on a soapbox. It's the same as having a meeting in a crowded public bar. It's the same as standing in Times Square and shouting. It's just a little bit more effective. And I thought it was interesting as well because, you know, we go on about Google and stuff like that. And in our day, it was the Encyclopedia Britannica, which was a big brand then. That was the Google of its day. Used to have people used to wander around selling it from suitcases. I don't know whether you had that, but we certainly had that in the UK. But I thought about brand as you know, what's my personal brand? And we were talking yesterday about symbols and brands, and the Nike tick came up, or the swoosh as it's sometimes called. And you know, I like to think of myself as a complex and nuanced person. So I haven't quite become like Shrek. I'm a bit nuanced. And therefore my Nike tick would be a bit sort of jiggly. There'd be kinks in it. And then there would be quite a few of them superimposed on each other, a bit like the Wisdom's logo. Except my ticks would be different sizes and there'd be different thicknesses, and some would be blurry and some would be sharp. So I think my sort of Nike tick would be a little bit messy. And you know, I think my personal brand, and personal brands have been around forever. Think of Casanova. Think of Harold Wilson, one of our politicians. Think of Churchill. They all had brands. They had a persona. And I think my personal brand would be something around honesty, equality, fairness, and compassion. The underdog, always championing the underdog. The environment, trees. My personal brand in a certain group in South Africa is Mr. TT is my name, which stands for Mr. Tree Talker. There's a story behind that, but we haven't got time for that. So it would involve trees somewhere, because trees are a very important part of my life. And also family. So I think it'd be very difficult to encompass my brand into one symbol. It would be like this Nike tick that's a bit sort of wobbly and blurry and kinky. And then there'd be green shoots coming off all over the place. There'd probably be a bit of sand scattered on it, because as you know, I love deserts. It would probably have legs so it could run. it would have arms so it could hug people. And yeah, so that's me. I'm just a mess. And love it.
Layers like an onion, just like. Thanks, Ed. All right, so let's get down to the underdog. Oh, sorry, no, not the underdog. Jasper, yeah.
Morning. Yeah, I think I find these topics very stimulating, and I'm also almost in my mind seeing the turmoil in the world of the people in front of me as we discuss some of these topics. And just after Trevor passionately bemoaned the fact that you know, why was social media and all the stuff not there when he was young and energetic and could grasp all these things? And now at our age, it's actually almost impossible to try and catch up with these guys who start to grow up with a cell phone in their hands. And then Tabiso come on board, and Tabiso says, hey, I love creating something out of nothing. And I'm sure at that point in time, Trevor says, yes, that's me, help me, help me. But then Tabiso went and he spoiled it all by talking about mushy subjects like love and helping people and stuff like that. And then I could see, no, Trevor is not in for all of this stuff. And I think it's just interesting. So when it comes to building a brand, I think what we all agree, it's about being consistent in your message. So whatever your message is, whether it is to just be, you know, mouthing off about all the bad things in the world or not, it's the consistency of the message that people then start to identify. Then the symbols and stuff like that almost just come later to, you know, to help identify you better. So in saying that, then with all these examples of people who've now attracted a great following, what is then the underlying need they are satisfying? So I've just made them, so it's either a need for information, like Trevor has discovered that geography now, that's a need for information, and there's and that's how Google Maps and all these things started to take place. Or there's a need for entertainment, and I suspect most of the so-called brands out there develop as a need for entertainment. People are bored and they just feel like, you know, let's see who can entertain us for a moment. And then other brands are there for ongoing support and a sense of belonging, which then brings me to say, what is this brand that you're trying to create? Because the fashionable brands, you can be famous and fashionable for today, but you won't be around very much longer. Within the next 2 to 5 years, you'll be replaced by the next fad of the day. And then for me, that's a bit of a waste of time. Good for you that you were famous for 2 to 5 years, but then what then? And I think it must be tough for those people who've now lost their pedestal and their message all of a sudden is no longer entertainment value, and they you know, what now? So it's more important for me to say, what for myself, what is this longevity thing that I can pour out my energy and my contacts and everything that I do? But that's everyone for himself. Then I was thinking, I'm in a pretty much the same dilemma as Trevor. There's no ways, even if I listen to Gary Vaynerchuk every day, 24 hours a day for the next year, at best, I would be a bad copy of him. But I could never be an original me and doing what he does. But I think what old heads like us could do is there's another way to tap into this market. And depending on what is this brand that you are trying to create, and I was just trying to be practical. So within Gig, we are trying to portray the culture of a nurturing environment where you as an individual can develop and then tell your story of how you developed your family from struggle to significance. Now, in doing that, I need lots of people who are far better than me in all this communication and the media and getting these things excited, but let them each express their understanding of the journey and get their following going. So we develop in Gig a grouping called Legacy Coaches that looks after 10 or more people. And these legacy coaches, and last night we had a meeting with them, they are so diverse. They range from professional people to people who are entrepreneurs, to people who are very much involved in community upliftment and stuff like that. And it's okay. So for me, then it's about being in the back office, piggybacking on the energy and the creativeness of people who grasp the message to say, how do we create a nurturing environment where these people can be released in their own stories? So I think in creating a brand, sometimes people almost arrive there without design, and it just happened. But I think if you want to design and you want to put energy in it, the importance of consistency is going to take a lot of energy. So make sure that you're busy with something that's sustainable. And then I was just thinking of the story of Elon Musk, which will probably become case studies for years and years to come. So he's pretty much a maverick like Richard Branson. And I think initially it was everything he tackled was because of the kind of persona that he was. But I was just thinking of some of the things that he poured his energy and his creativeness in. If he was to pass on today, will SpaceX still continue? And I think, yes, SpaceX in itself has become a brand now that grasps the imagination of people, of how they are, changing the way people thought about the cost of space travel and things like that. And then Tesla today, when you think of it, it belongs to Musk, but you associate it with, non-pollution and battery development and cars and stuff like that. And I know we had the discussion about the carbon credits and stuff, debacle as well. But the point is, Tesla will probably also survive without Elon Musk's personality. So it could be that the brand developed initially because of a personality, but then the way that personality was invested in the brand, Tesla is now a totally different animal from SpaceX, and they both will continue. So so that's my thinking on brands and how to develop brands and personal brands and stuff like that.
Okay, thanks, Jasper. All right, so Lee. Your personal brand, isn't it? What are you doing about it?
Yeah, I think like Trevor, I really battled with the concept of personal brand when it was first sort of touted as something that you needed to promote. I think, like Edward said, everybody had, well, not everybody, but there's certainly known people like Churchill, like Richard Branson, that have a recognizable brand, but whether, and maybe Richard Branson does promote his brand, but Churchill, would he have described himself in terms of a brand? I don't think so, even though he was recognizable in terms of his persona. I think that this idea of needing to promote who you are as a brand is something that's fairly recent. And it is something I've struggled with because I've always, in the business environment, always put the brand that I was working with in front. So I would deliver to that brand. So I worked with the Deal Maker company. So that was the front end brand, and I represent that. And it was the same with Wisdoms. And then this idea, and for me, it was triggered by going to a conference with JT Fox, who's a very interesting brand in his own right. I mean, not an easy person by any means, but representing a certain brand. And he really, really promoted the fact that you need to be front and center. And the reason for that is that in a world where you're getting more and more people onto platforms like social media, you are competing for space, you're competing for attention, and a logo, a symbol, yes, those big brands have those, but what differentiates you from everybody else is you, your unique self. And so what is it that's unique, specific about you? And that's what I love about what Thabiso was made up a word, for goodness sake. And the way you say it, Thabiso, I also want to be Antakalipa. Whatever Antakalipa is, I want to be it. You know, the way you say it is so fantastic. So then I had to think about putting myself more present. But even as I was thinking about today, I still feel like, and maybe it's because I still want to remain a private person. I still want to have that part of me that is not for public consumption. That there's me, that there's the essence of me, that is who I am. And then there's my brand. And I think that's what Jasper was talking about in terms of our communication, the consistency of our communication about who we are, or who we want to represent ourselves as. So how would I describe my personal brand? Thabiso did such a good job. He's done so much thinking around it. I had to put a little bit more thought this morning. What is my personal brand? And so I think for me, one of the words that come to mind is a driver. And I use that word, not a driver in the sense of making, of getting places. That exactly. Ivan calls me the boss. Trevor is using the whip, but it's just that I've often worked in my various partnerships where I don't necessarily have the original idea. I don't necessarily have the first vision. But I get it. When I listen and I pay attention, I understand what it's about, and then I do my planning and my doing and my making and actually try and make it happen. So for me, that's a driver role. It's also for me about excellence. So quality, and so when I'm not, so it's about trying to get to that point. It doesn't mean it's perfect every time. I've had to let myself off the hook a little bit sometimes, but it is about, delivering the best that I can. And it's also, I think, part of who I am and my brand is always going to be teaching. And I use that, seems like such a weak word somehow. I think somehow the value of teaching is being diminished over time. But for me, a teacher is somebody who's curious about the world, is interested in the world, and interesting things, and is looking for information, looking for content, and processing it and bringing it together, bringing different pieces to create some kind of digestible meal that somebody can then say, oh, okay, I didn't understand this, but now that you've put it in this way, bringing all these things together, it makes sense. And that somehow in that making sense, we move a way of thinking and a way of being in people's lives. So I think that's really in essence the areas that I would see myself. And then there is all the other personal stuff, but I'm using those things specifically in terms of how I want to represent myself, or how I'm hoping I am representing myself in my working life. So that's me.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? Because for me, I also really struggled with this. I also am not I'm not an up front and center kind of guy. I'm far rather be wandering around in the bush with my camera by myself, or maybe with my wife, but far away from people and attention and media and things like that. So yeah, it's been a significant challenge for me, actually, to even just to step into this role of hosting these Zoom sessions. It's a real change in the way of operation, a change in the way of thinking, a change in the way of doing. So yeah, personal brand is, I hear Dee when she says, you've got this sort of public persona and a private persona. I think in a way you can't disengage them. I don't think you can be authentic if you try and create a break. I think that you're always going to come through in whatever you do, and however you do it. And if it doesn't, people will soon pick up the lack of authenticity in the terms of the public persona message that you're trying to give. And I think that's, for me, what comes through in some respects, in terms of these social media personalities. I mean, Trevor's mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk. I think, he's very adamant about who he is in the public as who he is, anywhere else. Whether that holds true for some of these young YouTube and TikTok and Instagram type personalities, I don't know. I think possibly because of where they're starting, the brands that they develop are who they become. So, for somebody who's been around for a bit longer and didn't start in that process, I think the process is perhaps inverted. We have to look to develop a brand that matches our personality and our knowledge and our experience and our background. Whereas if you start YouTubing at the age of 13, what do you really have? You've got no life experience, you've got no knowledge, you just have excitement. I mean, Thabiso spoke about it. You have excitement, you have energy, you have passion, and you develop into that brand, which is probably who you become ultimately over a period of time. So I think it's a very different process depending on where you are on the age spectrum and where your starting point is from. So yeah, for me, as I say, when I think of myself, I just draw a blank when it comes to a brand. I must be perfectly honest. I just see who I am as who I am, and I try to be authentic and try to stick to what I believe and what I hold dear. Whether that comes across as a brand or not, I don't know. So yeah, very tough question for me. I must be perfectly honest. All right, so I think on that note, we passed the bottom of the hour. We need a topic for tomorrow. Anybody? Yes, Ed.
Yeah, it's yesterday I was on a Zoom call, and it's a weekly call we have, and someone said, "Oh, how are you getting on, John?" And John's always, "I'm fine now." And he'd gone into hospital on Saturday, had a pacemaker fitted in 45 minutes, and was out again with just a plaster on his chest, little tiny plaster on his chest. And he's as right as rain. And at 3 o'clock every morning, this little thing in his chest, the size of a pill, sends a message to say, upload all his data. If he wants to do anything energetic, he's got this little mouse he puts on his chest, and it increases the pacemaker. And it suddenly reminded me that you guys always bang on about Elon Musk as the great poster child of South Africa. and you bang on about money and all that sort of stuff. And for me, probably one of the greatest people that came out of South Africa was Christian Barnard, who did the first the heart transplant. And then it struck me as what saved our bacon recently is vaccines, which certainly the AstraZeneca one, which is developed in a university, was developed for nothing by scientists. So I wondered whether we could have some sort of conversation around, why do we value money much more than we value people's lives, or something around that aspect? Because it does fascinate me that, there's that guy that I meet every week. His quality of life has been magically improved by our National Health Service, which is free in our country, by a technical procedure which was probably invented by a scientist that didn't get paid very much, that got inserted by a surgeon that does get paid a reasonable amount of money, but nothing humongous. And he's not one of these TikTok stars. He just gets on and does his stuff, saving lives, improving the quality of people's lives. Yet we worship people that make loads of money. And I just wonder whether we could discuss that, and perhaps who should be the poster child of South Africa.
Now let's put this to bed once and for all. I'm sick and tired of this Ed Chapman and the direction that he wants to go. Good topic.
So what is it? What is the topic? Can you encapsulate your thing into a couple of words? Money versus lives, or is it?
Lee, you're very good at summing things up, aren't you? Because you said you were quite good at grasping the idea once it's come out, realizing what it was like, and making a plan. And if I should encapsulate your brand with my prejudices, you said you're a woman driver. So it's over to you to make some sense out of that, Lee, because you said you can do it.
Well, now I've definitely painted myself into a corner, or you've painted me into your corner. I'll work on it. So thank you. Great. Let's have a chat about that tomorrow.
All right. So we're going to talk about something tomorrow, which we will find out about sometime later today, hopefully, and then we'll have some thoughts on it when we speak tomorrow. So other than that, have a great day further. Cheers.
So essentially, it's around what do we value, money or life or whatever, or
Good.
Whatever.
All right.
But Lee, you can
value, where lies the value? Yeah. Or is it all lies about value? I don't know. But anyway, we'll take that one up tomorrow. Okay. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.